Last week we were at the annual Eurogamer Expo held at Birmingham NEC here in Blighty, and we got to go hands-on with a number of big upcoming titles. So here's a quick rundown of what we got to play and what we thought.
Pikachu! Eevee!
We weren't the only ones excited to get hands-on with this for the first time. In fact, hundreds of other people descended on Nintendo's booth at the very beginning of the show to join a 2-hour-long queue for 5 minutes of dicking about in Viridian Forest. The demo is the same one as from E3, which is probably why the Nintendo ninjas kept telling us off whenever we tried to go to any of the menus. Presumably there's something in there that they don't want people seeing just now, either because it's changed since, or perhaps simply hasn't been announced. The real takeaway from our hands-on time with the game was our first chance to try out the Pokeball Plus as a controller for the game. Somewhat smaller than you might first suspect, it does actually feel pretty good in your hand and feels rock solid as a product. You won't be afraid of chucking it into your bag to take with you for some portable play at the very least. As far as it being a controller goes, it actually only has 2 buttons. The one on top activates the menu, or when contextually relevant, acts as the B button to cancel out of stuff. The analog stick in the centre of the ball also acts as the main A button for most actions in the game. This does highlight the most significant issue with the controller though. When selecting an option such as an attack in battle, it's so easy to accidentally move the stick while pressing down on it and end up selecting something else entirely. It actually kind of feels like it would have been better to map the buttons the other way around. The button on the top should be the affirmative action and the stick button should be to cancel out. That way there's no way for it to mess everything up. It's likely too much to hope for that there'll be an option to remap the buttons for the controller, but if you can, when the game comes out in November, it'll be the very first thing I'd recommend doing. As well as having a wrist strap on the Pokeball, it also has a little ring for you to wear that allows you a bit of extra safety to actually throw the ball itself when using it to capture Pokemon, but without it costing you the price of a brand new TV. Whether you actually do let go of the ball or not, the motion controls to throw a Pokeball are pretty fun and responsive, so it does add a lot to the experience. Much like catching Pokemon in Pokemon Go, actually having a gameplay mechanic, rather than simply selecting an item, really does help to make you want to catch more Pokemon. You feel more involved in the process rather than it simply being an annoyance in the way of getting to the next bit of the game, as can often feel in the main series. I don't feel like losing random battles from the game is any loss at all, really. For the first time in years, it actually made me want to seek out Pokemon to encounter and capture. The fact that you can see them on the world map itself not only makes the game feel more alive, but really does make it feel like you're actually chasing after something, rather than simply running in circles waiting for a random number generator to deliver what you want. Our Nintendo Ninja was kind enough to highlight that as well as seeing red and blue glowing Pokemon, for smaller and larger respectively, you can also see sparkling shiny Pokemon out and about in the world, so you'll know which specific Pokemon you should be chasing to get that elusive trophy. Also, while you can encounter other Pikachu and Eevee throughout the game, your partner Pokemon is a unique model with slightly different textures, meaning that they'll always look different to others of the same species, even when placed side by side in the same team. And that's without getting into the silly haircuts and outfits that you can force onto your new furry child if you want. Overall, there wasn't a lot to learn from the demo, but it was worth a go anyway. The Pokeball Plus is a great little addition to the package that, so long as you can remap the buttons to make your life significantly easier while using it, I'd say is basically an essential component to the game to get the most out of it. For bonus points, it also makes the Pokemon's cry noise when you catch something, and it gives you a Mew. As a Pokemon game, it's ludicrously gorgeous on the Switch, and even though we'd give our right foot to never play a remake of Generation 1 again, it is at least the best it will have ever looked, and arguably play it really. If you've lapsed from your Pokemon love in the intervening years between Red, Blue and Yellow and now, this is the game to give it another try with. And even if you've stuck with it all this time just as we have, it's still going to be an enjoyable if somewhat basic experience that will tide you over until the next game in 2019. Team Sonic Racing is the spiritual successor to the genuinely brilliant Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. This game narrows the focus down to just Sonic and friends to take the fight to Mario Kart more directly. This focus does have a few benefits to make up for the sad downside of losing some great characters and fanbase. The weapons in SART were generic and rubbish, lacking all of the charm that Mario Kart's themed items have. In Team Sonic Racing, the items are wisps from Sonic Colors and Forces, and they have relevant attacks and powers as a result. Wisps might not be the most popular addition to the franchise, but they do at least fit in terms of power-ups. The real change that this game brings to the kart racing formula, though, is the team mechanic. Riffing off of the worst of the 3D Sonics, Sonic Heroes, each race sees you teaming up with two other racers, either controlled by the AI or by other players, to compete as one. Playing as a team comes down to three basic mechanics. First, you can skim past your teammates to give them a boost. Second is drafting behind teammates to get a boost. And finally, you can share items between your teammates and get more powerful ones for yourself in return. While you can simply just bomb off and try to win the race by yourself, if your teammates have an absolute shit show of it, you likely won't win after all. So you really do need to make sure that you do everything you can to help them out as and when they need it. The team mechanics are an interesting addition to an otherwise stale genre, but it's hard to say if they really work that well from the handful of races we got to try. Even though the game's race pace is closer to Mario Kart's somewhat slower style, which personally I'd class as a negative, but that's an entirely subjective point, the team's mechanics are quite clunky and not exactly pick up and play accessible. Easily identifying your teammates relies on picking out the characters themselves. There's no special indicator or anything like that, and it can be quite hard to do that mid-race. Similarly, bashing into the side of them or following in their wake can be hard to engineer while actually racing and trying to avoid crashing yourself. The item swapping mechanic is fine, but as well as lots of other dialogue that comes throughout the race, it all requires you having to look up and read the text at the top of the screen in the middle of a race. It's all a bit of a multitasking nightmare that can be a bit much off the bat for a new player. It might be fine when you get into the game after an hour or two, but that isn't going to get your mum to join in with you on a whim like she would for Mario Kart. It will also never really feel fair to come in first place but still lose because your AI teammates were useless. It's an inventive twist on the typical Mario Kart formula, and it needs to be to stand out as anything more than a Sonic-based knockoff, really. But by taking a closer aim at Mario Kart itself, Team Sonic Racing seems to be in danger of missing just what it is about Mario Kart's instant accessibility that makes it such a massive hit. Let's hope that any concerns can be addressed by the time the game comes out during the winter.
Crap like this, exactly why I hate portals.
There's really only one question you want an answer to here. And the answer is yes. Geralt is a lot of fun to play as. If you loved the hell out of playing as Link in Soul Calibur 2, then Geralt's going to be right up your alley. He doesn't have the projectile abilities of Link, but he is a quick and nimble swordsman, and he just fits into the series so perfectly, it even helps wash away the stink of that time that they put Yoda in it and utterly ruined the entire game.
Stage completed with this.
There's not too much else to say beyond the fact that the game feels like a great, chunky fighter with all the usual Soul Calibur features. Special attacks, character damage models, and a flashy rock, paper, scissors, Injustice style clash system that can help break up an opponent's onslaught. There's a huge amount of the game that we didn't get to see. There isn't long to wait to see the full package in action, because it's out on the 19th of October. Jump Force is a fantastically chaotic and frenetic game that will leave most people, who like myself, probably have absolutely no clue who half of these characters even are, almost permanently wondering what the fuck is even going on. which is brilliant. It just doesn't matter what the fuck is going on, because it feels so much fun to just hammer the buttons and make flashy shit happen. Does it matter that you have no idea what a gun is? Not in the slightest, because he just beat the shit out of Goku so hard he ended up on another map entirely. The game manages to both look great and bizarre at the same time. The world design and character models are brilliantly detailed and rendered, but these realistic anime characters are the stuff of nightmares at the same time. There are a lot of contrasting design styles for the characters, and that makes them all look somehow completely out of place next to one another, despite being rendered similarly. Anime fans will surely love the wide-ranging representation that will make up the game's roster and story mode. For the rest of us, the pleasure is just knocking them about for 5 minutes, and that's worth the price of entry all by itself. The game is out in early 2019 and is shaping up to be an almost essential character brawler, no matter your weeaboo power levels. It's been a very long time since the last Advance Wars game, and let's be real, Days of Ruin was a bit of a disaster. So if we ignore that entirely, it's been 13 years since Dual Strike was released. And that's really just terrible. Fortunately, for anyone that's also got an Advance Wars shaped hole in your soul, Wargroove fits the slot perfectly. Anyone who's ever played an Advance Wars game will know the deal immediately upon picking it up, but it's got some unique tweaks that make it its own thing as well. While Advance Wars commanding officers were just superpowers that you could set off in battle to either help turn the tide or press your advantage, the hero characters in Wargroove are also actual units, and by far the best units in the game. While it might be tempting to stomp through your enemy lines with them though, if your character dies, it's game over. Balancing using their abilities with protecting them will be a key part of each battle. Each successful round of attacks will gain you coins that you can then spend at special buildings to summon more units. Every hero character has their own set of unique units, but they generally all fill the same roles dependent on their cost level. As well as options to play against the AI or against another player, there's also the option to play in co-op with another player against the AI, which is a great gameplay twist that might help to somewhat balance out the fact that the game can be quite tough, promising an embarrassment of riches in terms of content. When Wargroove finally launches, it is definitely a must-have for any strategy fan, and utterly essential for the dozens of us that have been pining for a new Advance Wars for so long. We played on an Xbox, but the game's also coming to PS4, PC, and most importantly, the Switch as well. Also, you can play as a Dog King. Game of the Year 2018. And that's a quick roundup of most of what we got hands-on with at the show. As some of the bigger name titles are only around the corner, such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we mostly chose to watch and play the games that are a little further away. If you live in the UK but have never been to EGX before, make sure you get tickets for next year's. The show is always a lot of fun, has a huge amount of publisher support, and between the live stage shows and dozens of stalls selling gaming tat, there really is something for everyone. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of this nonsense, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click all the links in the description below to support us across the interwebs. Thanks!